Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Book to Block, the series where I bring my fantasy novel to life in Minecraft one block at a time. In today's episode, we're working again with a little bit of water over in the outside of the world. Let's get a look. Alright, so in the last episode, we did a little bit of water work with the meteorite mountains over here. And in a couple episodes ago, when we kind of mapped out all the river system coming from this huge ocean to be, I kind of had a little bit of a lore reason to why this area over here in the Badlands doesn't have any more water and it kind of dried out, and then it'll have this kind of empty lake over here in yellow. And my plan was it got diverted over this way. So I've already started bringing a little bit down, and as you can see, let's go take a look at what I've started. Alright, so we're back down here in the world. You can see there's the meteorite mountains we worked on last episode. There's the yellow lake with the Badlands where it's going to be all dried out eventually. And here's the river system. So it comes down this way where it's either been diverted naturally or by some human or non-human interaction or intervention, and it comes down to this lake over here. So this lake is kind of where all the water's been redirected, but over time, I didn't want it to just be another lake because I'm going to have lots of lakes throughout the world. I wanted this one to be especially different, and it's going to be a little bit larger than this because it's going to be its own biome, because it's going to go from this to something more like this. So I've kind of gone in and done just a rough shape of what the plan is for this biome. So it's a marsh, so it's not quite a swamp, but it's not quite a lake. It's what happens to a lake after it gets filled up by a bunch of dead leaves, a bit of mud and sand that comes in from the river. So I might have another maybe direct connection to my ocean that's over there that's going to be through a very dirty area that kind of fill this area up, and then it kind of creates this wetland marsh area. So right now I'm using a swamp biome just to get the different color. Below the water is actually mud, so it looks a little bit darker than it usually would, but I want to add a lot more detail than what it is right now. So I've got these couple islands, I'm going to turn them into a bit more marshy, and we're going to just do a lot of time lapses in this video because it's creating a biome. There's not too much lore come from this. I might add in some pathways through it. I've seen a couple cool drawings online of marshes recently, and that kind of inspired this video. But we just want to add a little bit more detail to this world, so let's do a little bit more. Alright, so now for the middle part of this video, it's all going to be done flashbacks with a little bit of voiceovers just because I got a little bit too into it and didn't do little in-betweens of as I was building it. I'll do a little bit of technique showing at the end of the video, but we're going to just go over all the progress I made through little bits of flashback, so I hope you enjoy. Alright, so as you can see here, we started with the grass like I showed in the last clip, but I changed it over to the muddy mangrove roots because it gave that kind of dirty feel of the mud, as well as a little bit of life with the brown that kind of makes it look like the roots of the grass I'm placing on top of it. You can see I kind of experimented with a couple cattails that I'll use much later to add a lot more detail to the whole build. Now, as you can see, I kind of compared the grass to the muddy mangrove to just the regular mud, and I felt the mud was too dark and it worked better under the water just to give a little bit more darkness to the whole thing. So after we chose the kind of ground type at the muddy mangrove root, we kind of went in with these colors of the different grasses. Now with this swamp biome, it gives different kind of shades in different areas. You can see some are more vibrant and some are a little bit more gray, kind of darker in color. And that really helps it out. Now you see all the kind of looking like wheat, that's actually the firefly bushes, because at night, this entire area is gonna light up and it's gonna look really good, and it's gonna add a lot to the atmosphere of the whole build. So I went around and kind of did noise painter all on top of the muddy mangrove just to give that kind of grassland feel to it all. Now, one of the things about a marsh is there's not a lot of detail. I don't have to do a lot of the underwater because it's all kind of the mud and sand that's settled over time. The top, you can't really have too many buildings because it would all just fall into the ground as it aged over time. So I thought, what can make this build better? Trees. So I did a bit of research, and apparently the bald cypress tree is a very common one around marshes, so I started looking at pictures and started trying to design them. Now, in the background of this little time lapse, you're going to see a couple of my previous attempts. They're not quite as good as I like them, so I started over and really went in on a 3D model. I kind of saw one so I could depict it from different angles and really get a good look. So I kind of went in, and here is the kind of idea of what I had, and then I kind of took the bottom, had an empty trunk, So it looks like it fell over and like it's dying because that's the whole theme of this area. It's over time, this used to be a great, beautiful lake, but now it's kind of sunken into the depths. All right, now we're back into regular play instead of flashbacks. As you can see in the background, I've done a bit of work, and it didn't really look good on a flashback because of how Axiom works. So let me just show you. So you can see here in front of you here, I've got a couple different types of trees. These three here are actually the exact same one, just rotated slightly using the rotation tool. So it's a messy tool that I can clean up, but it creates kind of individual trees that are similar, but very different in other ways. I also got my little trunk here, and I grabbed the top part of it to kind of create like if it had fallen over. I also have a larger version that I'll show off a little bit later, but for now, this is kind of how I did the whole thing. So instead of having it placed as immediate in the left here, I had it deferred because the problem I was having is when I place it, you can see there's some dirt showing just how I copied them over for the stamp. So what I would have to do is I'd have to bring it into the ground because I wanted these roots kind of growing into the ground like this. You can kind of see it there. And to do that, I have to do that for each and every one. Now let me just show you how many trees I placed. All right, so as we fly around on the outskirts, I kind of had a couple that kind of went in, but mostly those ones would have fallen over. So I might add some more trunks throughout the middle area, but it's mostly a lake, so wouldn't have too many trees in the middle. But as you can see, there are quite literally thousands of these trees. Each of them I had to essentially place manually, and it took forever. And with how Axiom works, when it is in this kind of mode here, the flashback can't see it until I pasted it. And with how this works with the spacing everything, you want to place them all first before doing the adjustments and placing them in. Because if you just did one of them, so if we just did that, pasted them in, and then did again, they're going to get really close and ignore my spacing rule that I designed. So that really took a long time and was not really good for the camera. So let's look over on the trees. So how I designed it, I did using the path tool to get the trunk, did a bit of manual root systems, and then did a bunch of outstretched bits. Below, I used the pale hanging moss because it looks very similar to how they look in real life. And then just a little bit of the birch because it's not quite a green color, it's kind of the most tame of all of them. And then kind of messed them all up, added a little bit of detail. They're still a little too flat for my liking. Like you can kind of see this bit is here, but with the amount of them, you're not really going to be getting that close. So we can kind of come to the center here and look, this is kind of the view you'd be getting if you're coming into the area. And it is vast and a huge biome. I mean, this was a lot bigger than I had planned originally. I planned just to do kind of detail on this bit. As you can see here, I did a little bit more of the cattails, adding some lily pads. I'm not sure if the wildlife is still in here anywhere. Oh, yeah, here we go. We got some of the frogs left. I spawned probably hundreds, but I don't know if they despawn based on mob caps and stuff. So this was a huge undertaking. Now, I kind of designed this whole thing to be viewed at either like dusk or somewhat night because I wanted all these fireflies. I mean, look at how many there are and like the sound they give off. It's just the atmosphere is just working great here. Now, I also went in and added some of these eye blossoms. So during the day, they're actually the closed version. So let's go grab one of those. So they kind of switch in between. And this was kind of giving the fantasy feel because, I mean, I've been doing very like scientific research, like how does a marsh form? How is it like naturally and like the real life? But I wanted a little bit of fantasy. So we have a little bit of these kind of fantasy. Ooh, didn't mean to do that. That's what I meant. But you can see it opens up. I have to fix all this. Always got to remember what mode you're on. And so that's kind of how I brought a little bit of fantasy into this feel of this area. Now, after I finished all the trees, all 1,000 or so of them, each of them huge trees, I came to the middle and felt it was so empty. So I designed this huge tree. You actually saw it earlier back over there. And I just wanted something kind of like a centerpiece. I still want to work on the root system because, I mean, it's sunk over time. There used to be a lot more roots, but I kind of lowered it into the ground as if like the marsh is swallowing this tree whole. Same with this tree here. You can kind of see it's started to grow underneath inside, like as it decays. And you can see like bits where like the branch fell off and it leaves this massive hole. Some of them are like lying down, bunch of missing empty areas because it's all kind of hollow and stuff. just to give that feel of over time it's breaking down and dying. Now, the next thing I did was add a little bit of ruins because this area felt, well, like I said, empty. So I thought maybe this used to be a small island on this center of the area where a church was. Now, this church is actually something I've already built before. It's actually this church here. So what I did is I removed all the wood from it. I kind of broke down all the extra bits that didn't really seem like they'd be structurally sound. So let's go inside. So I removed all these braces. And for these parts, I kind of broke them down like as I would think over time it would kind of get destroyed. And none of this other stuff inside would be kept. Obviously, this would be all different interior because it wouldn't be an exact copy of this kind of little village's church or worshiping area. So obviously they might not have a dragon here. They might have something else. Removed all the lighting, all the wood, all the glass, just to show the passage of time of like what can happen. So I didn't really want to like create my own new ruins for this. So I thought take a build I already have, make it unrecognizable, and it kind of works. You can reuse things like this over and over. You don't need to create new things every time. So I might go and take a couple of the other builds. I don't have too many out of stone is the problem, so it doesn't really work as well. I also sunk it into the ground a couple blocks. You can see these used to be like 3 or 4 high, I think. We were looking up at them a second ago, and you can see here's the original doorway, which is much larger. But I sunk it into the ground, kind of like the feel of everything I want is nature is reclaiming this area. Now, as you can see on the edge here, I kind of made up a little bit more of the terrain, just because this whole area I did a little bit of like raising, just so it'd feel not so flat. And I've left plenty on the outskirt, as well as the muddy mangrove roots. You can kind of see, so that I can expand this however big I want it. Let's take a look at the map real quick. All right, and here is the update on the map, so you can see how much the area this is. Like, look at the distance from here to here. It's almost the same as my massive mountain range from earlier in this series. So you can see all the detail from all these trees. You can see the fallen over ones, all the different, you can see these are the eye blossoms. These white ones over here, that's just because they're not loaded in. They didn't get turned into the orange ones. So if I went back to day, they would obviously turn back to the kind of white spots. But that's not really important. Now let's get into the kind of techniques I used for building everything. All right, for the kind of marsh mosaic type of thing, I used actually just a regular noise painter, like just noise preview. You can kind of see what it's going to look like. You can randomize it until it kind of looks like what you want. And then you just do like this. I did it with stone, and then as I did that, I chose a mask, bit of water, go to regular painter, crank that up, and we've got the marsh. So that's kind of how I planned that whole thing to get kind of a random kind of feel to it. Kind of match what I've seen in different pictures and other Minecraft ways people have made it. So this is just my way of recreating it. Now for the trees. So I used the path tool, just a simple shape. I could go into maybe a little catenary to maybe get a bit of curve into it, or however you want it to be. Like you can see this one's looking a little weird. So I'll go back to the kind of line, give it a little bit of shape by moving it so it's not directly straight up. And then I just paste that in. Next, I grab one, but I make it much smaller. And then you paste the second one. And this is how I get the branches. So this one, I kind of did the inverted. So you can see it's kind of like that. But I want to create the much smaller slack, just so it's just barely curving. You can kind of see like that. Then paste that in. And then I would go in with the leaves. So as I came in here, depending on how thick I wanted this, I would come in, slow right down. You can kind of just thicken it up like that. Very simple. You could also do that within Axiom itself. Next, I went with the pale hanging moss just to cover the bottom so that the leaves didn't cover them up. Because I need this kind of hanging out below it. Then I went around the edges, threw in a bit of leaves, just very basic. You want to just get the first idea. This is kind of one of the lessons where it's not going to look good until you get it all done. So I went in, kind of messed it around, and then just did that a bunch more times until we got one of these. So you can see it's very similar. I mean, for the root system, I kind of just drew on it just to get the kind of shape, a little bit of a curve. I used a little bit of the Catmanary or Catman roll. So you can kind of go like this, and then you uninvert it. You can kind of see it gives a small curve, and then you can adjust it, play around with where you want it. And then you can kind of place in behind so that these roots are kind of protruding a little bit. You can kind of see like this. You want it to be kind of like a little bit like that, and do multiple of those so you can get those kind of veins you see in roots. And like I said earlier, I've got a bunch of terrain kind of planning out. I've also sort of connected up the river system, turned the bottom into the mud. I need to do what I planned ages ago. You can kind of see I still have a little bit of extra missing. Kind of like what I showed, it's way over there somewhere. In a couple episodes ago, when I was planning the river system, I'll have to do the designing of all the detail underwater, and I have to figure out how I want to kind of merge between two different biomes. So right now, this is the swamp biome, but the ground is based on the money mangrove roots. So I need to figure out a way to kind of blend them together so it's not this harsh line. I might need to use a couple tricks to hide that line, but that's for a future episode. But this is going to be a great starter for another kind of biome in the world. It's really starting to take shape as I showed on the whole world map. We're getting lots more biomes, lots more areas to work with, and lots more areas for potential lore. But I think that is where we're going to leave today's episode. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe for more episodes coming soon. Until next time.